Well, good evening, and good day to all of you around the face of the world. My name is Maponga Yeshua Marara from the great Asose monarch in the great Zimbabwe, but for now living in the southern part of Africa. We have a grand announcement to be making at this late hour of our African civilization, talking to the local people and the Africans in diaspora. We have come up of age now where we cannot be watching and listening to the problems of the nations which we are going through. It has become of more importance than ever that as Africans we need not only start complaining about the issues around the political terrain, but the most important question that is coming to us right now is, what are we doing? What are we doing as Africans in terms of changing this narrative? There is an organization which we have established called AIM, African Indigenous Movement. African Indigenous Movement. Or it can be called IM, which means Indigenous African Movement. It is a baby that has been powered by farmers of thought, where we are developing the thinking patterns of the greater African child at home and away. The abuse of the African child has been on all the three continents, whether it be Asia, it be America, and it be on mainland. As such, in our generation, it has become of age and of great importance that we begin a conversation of how do we consolidate ourselves as Africans. Therefore, AIM has been built to start to decode the sacred oral traditions and oral history and knowledge into a text form, to form for us a body of work for the greater African society at home and away, without overlooking the mischief and the colonialism, including slaveries of the past. It is important that the death of an old person cannot be celebrated, because when an old man dies, we say and we discover that a library has caught fire. The onus is on us as young people of our generation to begin to consolidate this information and create a platform, an e-platform, even a physical platform, where the African Reformation for social re-engineering strategies can be discussed at length and at depth. The intention of AIM is to consolidate and attract all various African professionals across the globe, bringing together their professions and bringing together their skills and resources into rewriting the narrative for the African continent and beyond. These strategies will be consolidated together and a library of intellectual resources will be established. From this library, then we can begin to talk about the greater United Kingdoms of Africa. It is a fruitless exercise to think that we can put ribbons on the ears of a dead donkey, hoping that it will not smell. The democratic system as we have been given to it by the West leaves a lot to be desired for the primitive African like myself, who has watched for the past 60 years African leaders struggling to tame this foreign object called democracy. Therefore, I've sat down and I've broken down the objectives of AIM into the 7 key pillars. And I would challenge every professional person out there, including the traditional custodians of indigenous knowledge, to find a place where they can begin to add their contribution so that as a continent we can begin to grow together. So pillar number 1 speaks to us of the governance and indigenous systems. This challenges directly the political systems and seeks to address the Eurocentric democratic system and replace it with an Afrocentric indigenous governance system. We already had a system of governance amongst ourselves before colonialism came into place. So we're not starting from scratch. We just want to resurrect and collect some of those informations in some of the established monarchs that are still running and see how we can mainstream and streamline that information into a public document that Africa can begin to govern herself. We are being run right now by the Roman Dutch law. But until tomorrow, we'll never be Romans and we'll never be Dutch people. It only means that all our academic legal minds have not yet come to terms that we cannot study African indigenous governance systems as an elective. We needed our African brothers in the legal side and sisters to begin to consolidate together for us an African indigenous governance system which can transform the way we do politics on the African continent, the way we do business on the African continent. For the governance system is the backbone of the society. We already have the laws of Kemet, 42 laws of Kemet. We also have the laws of self-preservation, the laws of family preservation, and the laws of community preservation. And all these streams of knowledge can formulate together for us a certain body of work which Africa as a nation can adapt to themselves and speak to the challenges that we are facing from the West. Second pillar is that of education. We are always studying about other people. We need all academicians. There are various fraternities and faculties to collect the doctorates and PhDs that are hanging and gathering dust on the American, European, Australian, New Zealand, Canada universities, and say, let's collect all these doctorate dissertations and have them as a body of intellectual property on the African continent. And some of the projects that you have already written about are good projects that can be implemented on the African soil. We have enough network on the African ground, we have enough royal connections, and in some certain cases, even progressive political clouds, which can implement some of those projects. Need it be that when tenders and contracts are coming up on the African ground, we will be very happy to connect those that have skills who are in diaspora and outside with the amount of work and projects that are happening on the African continent. And your education works in as a key, as a password to unlock the unemployment and the greater gap of education. But over and above studying about other worlds, we needed the African academicians to come together and give to us an African academic curriculum which we can take our children through from as early as kindergarten and into high school, into college, into universities, careers which are relevant to the African people, making and maximizing on our resources that we have on the ground. Pillar number 3 is the commercial pillar. All the bankers, all the insurance companies, all the investment strategies, whether they're in bitcoins and other types of currencies, if you know about money and you know about commerce and business, pillar number 3 is for you, where you come together as business people, not only to do business, but to formulate for us a business strategy as to how can we use the business knowledge that you have to enhance and change the business terrain of Africa. Looking and benchmarking at the United Emirates, you're looking at China, looking at India, and seeing how other nations and how other nationalities have been able to leverage on their culture to create business models that are relevant and to employ and to develop their own countries. We need you as Africans, wherever you are. We need to find yourself in this program and see how best your skills can add value to what you're already doing. So pillar 1 is governance, pillar 2 is education, pillar 3 is commercial and commerce, and pillar number 4 is agriculture. If you have majored in agriculture with all its sciences, then that's your pillar. How do we create and make Africa a food basket for the whole continent and the world over? We still have lots, more than 60% of arid land in Africa, which has not yet been maximized for agricultural purposes. We need you with your qualifications in your various aspects of knowledge and how to work with the ground and the sciences of agriculture, sciences of food security, to come into this pillar. Bring your doctorates, bring your master's programs, bring your intellectual properties and your knowledge system, and let's build an Africa that we want to see, not only for ourselves, an Africa for our children. When one day your children, whom you have had in diaspora, would want to come back home, where will they be coming back home to? When you as a father, you spend all your brains and all your resources in a foreign land. I think before you die, it is critical and it is important that you begin to make an investment of some of your skills to mainland. Even if you cannot be here in person, but your knowledge and your qualifications and your advices would work very well to assist us in how do we afford and how do we assist Africa to become a bread basket of the entire continent. A nation that cannot feed itself remains a poor and a begging nation to the hands of those that can supply food. Pillar number 5 is the cultural pillar. How do we harvest our culture as Africans? This speaks to African games. This speaks to African fashion. This speaks to African entertainment. This speaks to the entire space which we can call the bling bling of Africa. We have enough cultures in Africa which can create TV programs which can create another National Geographic, but this time an African version. Instead of having some Europeans coming to Africa, collecting pictures and interpreting our cultures from outside, we can have the real people telling us what is happening. Systems of passages of children, childbirths in Africa, the cultures of Africa, our art, our beadwork, our crafts, our dances, and etc., our technologies, our sciences, and from Kemet to right where we are. We cannot be living in square houses when in Africa we must be living in round houses. And the Cultural Corner speaks to all the cultural experts around the world, those who have studied anthropology, sociology, psychology, cultural perspectives, and any form of advanced qualification in the space of cultural development. That will make you very useful on this pillar of cultural reform. And then number 6 speaks to the religious and spiritual column. This speaks to all spiritual people in all their fraternities, including Christians, ministers, bishops, shamans, sangomas, inyangas, in any fraternity, as long as you say you are a spiritual person. We needed to consolidate this whole group and find the God of Africa. Find our solid God of Africa. If China and India and Europe and America can speak of a centralized God, why is it that in Africa we are still remaining in a plural space? And because of that reason, our independence has not given us spiritual connection to the God who runs, who loves, and who can drive the greater African agenda. Even at this moment when Africans are in trouble, each tribe is crying in its own way. We don't have a central place where, as a black people, Abantuum, Ubuntu, Ntu, we all can call upon one God. We all can call upon one deity who can hear us all in the omniscience. And this group, I think, will be the noisiest of them all. They need to be given a very big room with no windows and everything, and leave them there to argue for a very long time. I would love to see the outcome of this conversation. The religious pillar. Can we have just one question? Who is the God of Africa? And how do we consolidate all these religions? And because Africa has become a dumping ground of foreign gods. Those in the East come and dump their religion here. Those in the Middle East dump their gods here. Those in Europe dump their gods here. As if Africa remains a godless society and we need to be borrowing gods who look like some other white little boys with blue eyes and blonde hair, and we're supposed to be bowing and kneeling down in someone who looks exactly like the colonizer who has abused us in Africa here. And I think that time is up. That time of that white Jesus is gone. That Jesus, the last time he died was in 2019. He will not be crucified again in Africa on another Easter. We need to start defining our own African spirituality and writing our own context in terms of our epistemologies and function. Pillar number 7 is the ecological pillar, deliberately, which I also divided into the technological pillar. This is where the industrialists belong to. All the technologies in the world, how to make this, how to manufacture this, how to produce this, and remember the underpinning word of development must always be EQ, ecological intelligence. How do we do and ship and improve on technologies to improve the African lives without destroying the livelihood and the nature, the beautiful home that we have as Africans? So we have the ecological pillar, we have the religious and spiritual pillar, we have the cultural pillar, we have the agricultural pillar, the commercial pillar, the educational pillar, and the governance pillar. These 7 pillars form the key foundation of AIM, African Indigenous Movement. So in every country in Africa, even in diaspora, in South Africa, for example, we're going to register a SIM, South African Indigenous Movement. In Zimbabwe, we're going to register ZIM, Zimbabwe Indigenous Movement. In Botswana, we register BIM, Botswana Indigenous Movement. In Nigeria, we register NIM, Nigeria Indigenous Movement. In Ghana, we register GIM, Ghana Indigenous Movement. In Egypt, we register AIM, Egypt Indigenous Movement. So that at the end of the day, the entire African continent and its young people can have a clear agenda on how to interrogate the politics of the day, the economics of the day, the agriculture of the day, the ecology of the day, the commerce of the day, the education of the day, and the governance of the day. If there should be any transaction that is happening in Africa, this body needs to become the sieve through which we interpret the blueprint of what is coming to Africa. We cannot be sitting on the sides of the road as beggars forever when we are sitting on such a great amount of resource. How dare you as Africans that you can be begging for gold while you are leaning on gold? The time is now that AIM must become of a great importance and function to you. From wherever you are, start thinking homeward. Start thinking homeward. A tree without its roots cannot go very far. A building can only be as strong as its foundation. We're here to build the foundation for the next civilization. It took the Europeans 400 years to build the colonial system which they are enjoying now. It will take us also a great amount of time. I cannot say 400 years, but it will take us quite some time. But our generation will put the laying foundation so that our children can carry the battle forward. I carry in my hands the blood of Nkwame Nkrumah, the blood of Julius Nyerere, the blood of Robert Mugabe, Sankara, Sobukwe, Steve Biko, and all other stalwarts who have walked the face of Africa. Marcus Garvey, and we're not forgetting, of course, Martin Luther, Malcolm X, and many other liberation struggle battles that have gone on around the world. And these battles need to start finding a landing strip in our generation. I will not close my eyes before we see Africa coming together. So what we're going to do, it's a simple strategy. We are running a Farmers of Thought Institute where we are training the first 3,000, 3,500 young people who can understand this idea. From the 3,000 people, each one of them will train another 100. That gives us 30,000. And each one of them trains another 100. That gives us 3 million. And the 3 million train another 100. That gives us 3 billion. Within the space of the next 6 months, we must see that the entire African continent is running with one message. How do we govern ourselves? How do we educate ourselves? How do we do business with ourselves? How do we celebrate our own culture and celebrate our own sports as Africans? How do we preserve our own culture? How do we practice our own spirituality? Ultimately, what type of industries do we need in Africa to carry to the next generation? Yours truly, Maponga J, from Farmers of Thought, here representing African indigenous movement. Your hope for the future. And until we decide to do something about it, the Europeans will never do anything about it. And of course, those who oppressed you will never donate your freedom to you. It takes you confidence to stand up and do something for yourself. My name is Marara, which means manure. When leaves fall from the ground, from the trees to the ground, they rot in the ground. And in the rot in the ground, new plants can grow. Here is Marara, manure to you. Plant good ideas. Let's expect a good harvest from here. Details and everything else will be following on this channel as we are growing together. AIM is your organization. Own it in your various countries. We will assist you and give you the software to drive this organization to the next level. Have yourself a wonderful day. If ever you are thinking, think homewards. If ever you are dreaming, dream home. If ever you are traveling, travel home. If you are investing, invest home. If you are buying, buy at home. If you are dancing, dance to the music of your land.